Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar for standard drafters that will be talking about editing in XML, especially preparing you, in fact, a nice overview of how to prepare a well-structured XML file. So my name is Elsa, and will be the webinar moderator of today. You will see that you are all muted, so you do not have the possibility to intervene or ask your questions. But you can use the questions and answer panel in the GoToWebinar control panel to enter your questions. We will then have a look after the presentation to the questions and reply as good as possible. Should your question remain unreplied, you will always find it back as soon as possible online on the website, where we list up the questions and the answers that were raised today. Should you be on Twitter, you're always free to tweet and share the information that you will learn about this webinar via our handle @standards4EU. So now it's time to give the floor to the speakers of today. Please welcome my colleagues Amy Jane Conley and Frédéric Dufour, who are both project manager in a specific area here in the Standardization and Digital Solutions unit. Frédéric and Amy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Els. Good morning, everybody. My name is Amy Jane Conley, and I'm a project manager in the energy and living sector, and I'm an editor. I'm here today with
Frédéric Dufour. Hello, I'm a project manager. I'm working as an editor in the mobility bubble, standardization and digital solutions, just like Amy.
And today we're going to discuss what is an XML file, who is using it. We're going to talk to you about the simple and standard templates for both CEN and CENELEC, and a little bit on the styling behind all of that. We're then going to talk about some common drafting points, specifically figures, tables, and formulae, any special cases and exceptions to XML, and then Fred is going to talk us through the conversion of your Word file to XML.
But first you may wonder, what is XML and who uses it? Well, what is XML? You have to know that XML is a Unicode-based extension. This is what an XML file looks like. You can see it's coded pretty much in Unicode font with tags highlighted here and there. And this extension, XML extension, is convertible into HTML, which means you can convert it into an HTML page. Here is a fine example. You can see the XML file, and in front of it, here is the HTML version of this very same text. And XML is an XML file is another deliverable or version we provide along with the PDF and Word files, which means you can this XML file is readable as HTML on tablets, on smartphones, on your laptops, so that it allows standards to be read on many different electronic devices, e-readers as well, or laptops, you name it. Now, who uses XML? Please, Amy, tell us.
So, people currently using the XML file that we are bound to prepare are mainly our CEN and CENELEC members, and they use XML to generate PDF files for, as Fred said, a far more flexible viewing. They also use it for their national translations, much the same as our translators who use the XML file primarily to prepare their translations prior to the launch of the inquiry in the formal vote and publication. But we also distribute the XML at national level, along, as Fred said, with our Word and PDF files. So how can you get started with the preparation of an XML file? Well, first of all, you can start with the simple and standard templates, and we have something for CEN and CENELEC. So these simple templates, or the standard templates, can be found on the CEN and the CENELEC BOSS sites. On the CEN BOSS, you have two options. You have the STD template, which we'll go into in a little more detail shortly, and we have the simple template available too. On the CENELEC side, at the moment, we just have the standard template. So if you click the links on the CEN and CENELEC BOSS, you have the option to download, and you will receive the simple template in CEN and CENELEC, just a simple Word file download, which is shown here, and also a zip file for the STD template, which is CEN only. So we'll look at the STD template first, which is on the CEN side. So if you open the zip file that is given to you, you will have these options. So you have the German version, which is std_de, and you have the English and the French version, which is underneath. And for today's explanation, we will stick with the English version. So you open that and Word will open itself. You need to click Enable Macros and you will be met with this dialog box. You have the option to do French dialog, English dialog. There is German too, but we already have the German file provided. So we click English dialogues and then next. It takes us to this box where you fill in all the relevant information related to the document. So you've got your TC title, the secretariat of the TC, your work item, your document reference, the month and the year of publication, hopefully, any draft numbers, your organization, as if it's CEN or CENELEC, ISO, IEC. You have the stage, which is inquiry, formal vote, first working draft. All of these are drop-down menus. And you also have the document type and subtype, which is if it's an EN, a technical report, an amendment or a core agenda. You then also have mandate and directive information, endorsement and patent rights. It's really simple, just click what you need and click next. You'll then be asked to save your file. So when you've saved it wherever you need to save it, it will do its thing, it will work a little bit, and then you will be presented with this example on the screen. So as you can see, I prepared just some fictitious information. So we have PREN 1234, Part 5, 2019. The title information. If you don't have the German and French titles at this time, it's completely okay. We just need the English. And then to the left of that, you can see that there are some styles. So ZZ cover and normal. And this is completely okay. This is what we are going to focus on today.
So you have to know that regarding the styling, the draft view shows all the styling. If you go on the view section on Word, you can press on draft, and you would see the styles pretty much on the side. And also you may also select the style you want from the palette each time. So this is the first possibility if you want to use this or that style. As you can see that menu, apply styles. Or another option, you may click on Format Painter, which means you may select the style you want to copy, click on Format Painter, and apply it where necessary.
So the STD template is a little more complex to use. So if you're not too confident with that, there is the option of the simple template, which is much simpler and is already very much pre-styled and already has a lot of the information included that you will definitively need. So we have on the screen just a few examples of what this looks like. So you have your titles, which again, all completely styled. You have the European foreword, which contains all the information. You just fill out the parts in red that you need. You then have the introduction, which you can delete, it's not obligatory. You then have clauses 1, 2, and 3, which are obligatory. Again, you just fill out the parts that you need in red. Everything is included, fully pre-styled, and this really does help the editor when it comes to the styling, because it means we have less to do in that regard, and we can focus on the technical content of the standard. So we can ensure a really high quality draft from the very beginning. On the CENELEC side, we have again, it's called the STD Template CENELEC. However, it is very, very similar to the simple template, which is very nice because again, everything is included, everything is fully pre-styled, and it makes life a lot easier. So we highly, highly recommend when you're starting out, start with these templates. If anything is unclear at all, get in touch. Mail production's always open. An editor can always get in contact with you and help you fill these things out. So when you've completed your standard with one of the simple templates, we're going to need the following things from you as always. We need your transmission notice, we need your Word and your PDF files, a PDF version of the Word file you've created. We also need the figure files. Now in CEN this is obligatory, in CENELEC it's not obligatory, but we mention it because in terms of XML, the figure files are vital for the creation of an XML file. So we have these requirements, either the figure files need to be in .eps, which is Adobe Illustrator, or .tiff, which is Adobe Photoshop, compression LZW, 600 dpi, and size 100%. And we also need figures if you have anything in a table or a key, we still need a separate figure file. But we're going to talk about this right now in a little more detail. So we have these technical requirements. As I said, these are vital for the creation of an XML file. If we don't have the separate figure files, the creation of XML as higher quality as the Word file is very, very difficult for us. So again, I'll keep the technical requirements on screen if you want to make a note of them, but you will have these slides when we're done. But just to give you an example of the naming, as you can see on the right-hand side, the naming is very basic. So for each figure file should be named separately. If you have a subfigure, as you can see, we have 001A and 001B. But then if you have a figure in a key file, in a key as well, we have 004_1. It's just really simple naming that helps us out. And all of those files are in EPS and hopefully in the correct technical requirements. If you're unsure if your figures are the correct requirements for us, you can check them before you upload them to us. If you go onto projects online for both CEN and CENELEC, if you look in the top right-hand corner, just under sign out, you have image quality check. And if you click that, you'll be taken to the screen that you can see right there. Upload your zip file. It's all very self-explanatory. Click upload and it will provide you with an Excel file that will tell you any problems with your figures or if everything's okay. If everything's okay, send them in. So why do we need these rules? The top example that you can see on your screen is a clipping from a Word file. Now, as you can see, everything is there. It's high quality. It looks very good. But we didn't receive the figure file for this, so we weren't able to link the document with the Word file. So when we created our XML file and we converted it to HTML to quality check it, as you can see, figure 1 is missing, but it's in the Word file. So if we don't have your figures, understandably, the people who create their PDF files with our XML file, they don't have the figure there. So it's important that you send us your figures if you have them in CENELEC, and for sure you need them in CEN. Now, we can extract figures from the PDF file specifically for CENELEC, but there are a few problems with this. It can result, first of all, in a very poor quality of figure, because while we can guarantee that we will have the technical requirements, it may distort the image, it will certainly reduce the pixel count, and therefore reduce the readability. So while we do have a workaround for it, it is certainly not going to provide us with the high quality that will reflect all the work that you've put into the standard itself. So just bear that in mind. Some of the things, aside from not having the figure files, that can sort of hinder us a little bit in creating the XML file is incorrect styling. This can also lead to missing figures in the HTML. So if you have a figure and you've styled it as body text, for example, or normal text, something like that, it can lead to missing figures in HTML, which leads obviously to wrong rendering for the PDF, which is not useful for our members. We also run into problems with inserting figures into the text. So sometimes we often come across what we call floating figures or figures in text boxes or auto shapes. The processing that we use deletes all of this. So we often lose figures and it's very time consuming to try and figure out where these figures were supposed to be. So try and use the insert function, and you can do insert and link is the best way to do that. If you get stuck, contact us and we can always help you with that. And finally, don't resize figures in Word. Often, if you insert the figure, it can be tiny and you might be tempted to just make it a bit bigger. The problem we have with that is when we create the XML file, it will take the size of the figure file itself rather than what you've created in Word. So make sure that you resize the figure file itself, and then you can check if you right-click on the figure and click Format Picture. You can scroll across the tabs to size, and provided that the red box highlight is 100%, you're good to go. As I've mentioned before, text boxes and auto shape are not allowed. We have a lot of tools here in CCMC that process the text for us, that highlight it, that color tag it, and unfortunately, these tools delete text boxes and auto shape. So if you've manipulated a figure within the Word file using an auto shape, you've maybe whited something out, it will delete it. The XML file uses the specific figure file itself. And then again on formatting, sometimes we have a bit of problem with the layout, and this can be very time consuming for us to have to go in and fix. So the best way to lay out your figures, if you have a single figure, is as shown on screen. We have the figure file, a key underneath, and a simple title. Here we have figure 7. And if you have sub-figures, we strongly recommend that you lay it out like this. So not in a table, anything like that, just figure file, subtitle, continue until you're done, and then your figure title at the end. Don't worry about how it looks when you lay it out, because the styling that we have will lay it out for you. Some of the problems that we often meet are when you have large numbers of figures. Large numbers of figures very often lead to longer processing times because it increases the overall document size. If you have a large number of figures, just make sure that you are formatting them very simply, very clearly, and try not to reinvent the wheel with your formatting. And if you want any further drafting guidance on figures, you're more than welcome to check out our previous webinars that we've done on this. We covered everything extensively, I believe back in 2017, and those rules still apply. So now on to tables, which also causes a problem sometimes. So we ask that you do simply drafted tables only. So what do we mean by that? Well, if you start merging cells and you have very long cells, it can cause us problems. So the first example here that we have is a very nice, very clear, very simple looking table. We have table 2, but as you can see, it runs across 2 separate pages, which is absolutely fine in the Word file, but when we convert to XML, this is the problem that we have, a big red box, and we don't like big red boxes. So the best way to get around this is to simply just split that long table and just hide the borders, which we'll show you how to do that momentarily. Complexly drafted tables also cause us problems, so we often tell you to hide borders and to avoid merging and splitting cells for layout, except when you have a very long cell. So for example, here you can see the lines are slightly misaligned. Data 1 doesn't match up with data 4, data 2 and data 5. It looks okay in the Word, but it causes us problems. We often get parsing errors, which means we can't get an XML file at all. So we ask you to just use the hidden borders. It might look a little bit strange, but it looks no different to how it looks on the right when you just remove your grid lines. So how do you hide your borders? Well, you highlight the cells either side of the border you'd like to hide. You go up to the very top on Design in the Design tab, and you use the border function, and you can do inside borders or hide vertical border or hide horizontal border. And voila, it is hidden. We can see a small dotted line here because we have the View Grid Lines function checked, but you may see nothing. Either way, this shows that the border is hidden. For layout, try not to use tabs to lay out your text within the table because this gives us an error. It's not something that will stop us from having an XML file, but it can mess with the rendering. So try to use the layout options in Word. Again, on the Layout tab, you have left, center, and right justifications. And if you have a lengthy table header, use the text direction. Try not to split tables either. Try not to have table 2, 1 of 1, 2, 1 of 2, all of that kind of thing. If you have a table that's longer than 1 page, just repeat your header rows. This is because when people generate their PDF from the XML, it's not going to show up as a split table, but rather it will show up as one continuous table. So be aware of that. You just highlight the header row and click repeat header rows in the Layout tab. Nested tables also cause us a lovely problem. This is an example of a nested table. And when we process this, if this is something that we miss, we're often told that this will turn into tabbed information. So it absolutely will not process with nested tables. These are sometimes horrible to try and get rid of because obviously we want to keep your information as clear as possible. So please try and avoid this as much as possible. And try to avoid as well any black and coloured backgrounds with white text. As you can see here, it may look impressive, but when we convert it to XML, it's very difficult to read. So if you imagine this with a black background, the text is not visible at all. Auto-numbering also causes us a problem. This is applicable also for figure titles, not just your table titles. When we process with XML, we can often lose all of the auto-numbering and we get error but not defined, which causes us problems because we then have to go in and number everything manually. So if you have a lot of figures and a lot of tables, that's a lot of time. And please don't provide us with tables as figures. Tables need to be editable not just by your CEN and CENELEC editor, but by your translators too. So make sure that your tables are not figure files. We will absolutely ask you to give us an editable table if you do this. And again, much like the figures, be aware if you have too many tables, that's numbered tables or even tables that are used for the layout of text or formulae or figures, this will cause us problems. So if you have a lot of tables, make sure they are nice and simple and just sort of pay a thought to the XML behind it. Simple tables are very nice. Now over to Fred for references and tags.
Thank you very much, Amy. So now I'm going to talk to you about references in text, which means about normative references in clause 2, about references in a final bibliography, and also about references in general in the text. So please be aware that the references contained in clause 2 and in the final bibliography will be tagged. So here is an example of an HTML page with a clause 2, normative references, in which the two references are tagged, which means the number of the references will be identified, the years of reference of this or that reference will be clearly identified, as well as the titles. And the references will be tagged as well in the text itself. Here is another example of two references in a text on an HTML page. And you may wonder, why go in such detail about references? Well, here's the point I wanted to make. Please be careful your references are correct when you send us a draft or final draft for editing. Because, for instance, please do not provide us work items as references. These will not be processed, and we have to check these work items and replace them with the correct reference at CCMC. This isn't too much of a problem when we have to do the job for one work item, but this turns into a problem when we have to do the job for 20 work items in a text. Similarly, please be also careful about as to whether the references in the text are correctly reproduced. For instance, here you can see in that example, TS 12763. This is not correct. It should be either CEN TS or CENELEC TS. This is another problem for us if there are too many of these such mistakes in the text. So please, no wrong references to technical reports or technical specifications as TR XXX or TS XXX. Now, here is another aspect regarding XML files, which some of you may have heard about or know of, Formulae. Well, to create your formula in your draft or final draft, there are two different options. The one we recommend at CCMC is using the math type tool. The math type tool is a tool which will allow you to either create or convert word equations. And this is the tool thanks to which the formulae can be properly processed by the system in the XML file. Any other format for formulae in an XML file will not work. Another option which you may enjoy if you don't have too many formulae to work on in a text is the word equations tool, which is the basic tool you will find in Word. But please be aware that this may cause us problems if we have many formulae to work on in a document. Why? Because these word equations would have to be converted as math type, and we have to do the job at CCMC if this wasn't done. And this is a huge this is kind of a huge amount of work for us to convert all these word equations into math type equations and then to check they were properly converted. And please do not provide your formulae as figure files. These figure files are pretty much just like figures in a text. And in that case, if you provide those formulae as figure files, the problem will be the formulae won't be convertible, they won't be processable, and they won't be changeable. And on top of that, the conversion of the formulae into XML will not be possible either. Now, how can you style your formulae? Well, style your formulae using the style Formulae. No surprise. For instance, here is a fine way to style them, which is here in your Word file. You would have your formulae styled as Formulae. This is what you can see on the left margin. But do not style your formulae in tables that way, because otherwise you have to turn this type of small tables into formula lines. Now, if you remember the start of our presentation, we told you that XML files were convertible into HTML pages. I'm going to show you now how we at CCMC find out whether an XML file can be converted into an HTML format. This isn't something standard instructors have to do, but this is something we at CCMC have to ensure. Anyway, once the Word version of a document is edited, we at CCMC have to convert it in XML, which means we have to do the job and prepare the XML file and check the standard or draft will be available as XML. Except that certain conversion problems may occur. For instance, here is the type of message we editors often get whenever there is a problem when we convert a Word version into an XML version. One more time, this isn't something that you will experience, but that we, CCM editors, experience at CCMC. Which means that for this very print screen, or very document which you can see on the screen, in order to process this Word file in XML, we'll have to sort out the few issues listed in this text box. First, please delete or restyle paragraphs found with these invalid styles forward. This means the style forward doesn't exist, and therefore we will have to style the certain paragraphs as forward text. Second, there may be equations that should have been math type format. Please check. As I said, only math type formulae can be processed into an XML file. So this means certain formulae weren't properly converted, and we at CCMC have to ascertain that these equations can be our math type, and we have to do the job for these. last issue, there are 3 additional styling inconsistencies. There were 3 XML parsing errors, which means that at 3 different points in the documents, there were 3 mistakes that occurred, and because of which the Word file couldn't be converted as XML. So we, at CCMC, have to correct these inconsistencies to have a proper XML file. So, okay, we sort out the problems. And here is the Word file with the tags corrected version. And now it's working. Now, you can see on the screen the Word file on the left-hand side, and now on the right-hand side, you can see the XML version of it. In other words, this Word file on the left-hand side was properly converted into XML. And now, one more time, the conversion from XML into an HTML format is something that we do at CCMC to ensure that the XML file wasn't corrupted and that it can be processed. So this is more for your culture. I'm just showing you here how we at CCMC work to convert XML into HTML. Before we at CCMC process a deliverable, we always make sure XML files can be converted into HTML pages. And in order to do that, we use our converting tool, which we have here at CCMC, which is called XML check. We have an XML check for CEN, and we have an XML check for CENELEC. And then we at CCMC convert the XML file into an HTML version, and we check the HTML versions. You have to know that sometimes certain problems may occur when we generate the HTML version, which means certain additional inconsistencies may be pointed out to us by an automatic electronic report we do have here at CCMC. So one more time, here is the final report we have to deal with to make sure the HTML version, HTML page would be fully readable. Here is the example of an error report we have, of an error, more precisely. So we can see there is an error. We can see there is a hanging paragraph, which is before subclause 4111. This means we have a paragraph which is part of subclause 411, but not part of subclause 4111 or 4112. And this is to be corrected. Another option is there's a mistake regarding the styling of this section. So I know when I read this report, I have to correct in the Word file what needs to be corrected in subclause 411 or 4111, and then regenerate the XML and check out afterwards the HTML page. Similarly, any report regarding the conversion of formulae will be pointed out in another report, which is called the Formulae or math type report. So here I can see I will have to have a look at the formula in D21 and D22, and I will have also to check out the 66th formula. These formulae may not be properly converted on the HTML version. And also there might be, if you look at the last line on this print screen, another problem regarding the formula in C4221, which I would have to check out, may be correct in the Word file, and then if provided the formula is to be corrected, then reprocess the XML version and check out the HTML version afterwards as well. Now, please be aware that certain deliverables aren't currently available as XML files. So first of all, certain CWAs, unfortunately, we can't process certain CWAs when they weren't drafted originally with the simple template. This would mean too much work, and also this may mean certain mistakes occurring when we process the CWA, which means these CWAs would be only available as Word and PDF. Other deliverables that are currently not available in XML for the time being are parallel IEC deliverables on the CENELEC side. On the CEN side, ISO CDV, parallel ISO text at CDV and DAFTIS stage aren't available. And please be aware that if we have to make an amendment or a corrigendum on a publication, and if the publication was edited of something like more than 5 years ago, then we do not have to make an XML version of the amendment of a standalone amendment or of a standalone corrigendum, because the mother standard wasn't prepared in XML. And last but not least, please be aware that trilingual deliverables on the CEN side and on the CENELEC side aren't processed in XML because the structure proves too hard to be converted, and also because these files are called XSTM and XSTF, and because of the file naming conventions, certain XML files couldn't be processed because of these file names.